Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, the air was thick with anticipation. The summer sun cast long shadows upon the cul-de-sac as it dipped below the horizon, illuminating the brick facades of neatly maintained homes that offered little hint of the turmoil lurking beneath the surface. On one such evening, 30-year-old Rebecca Clarity, a beloved local elementary school teacher, was due to return from her afternoon jog in the nearby park. Family and friends were accustomed to her daily routine, and this evening was no different, or so they thought. When the clock struck 7 and Rebecca had yet to arrive, unease seeped into the hearts of those closest to her. With every passing minute, their worry transformed into a gnawing anxiety. The vibrant communications and warm laughter that characterized her life grew silent. As evening settled into night, Rebecca's close friend Sarah, fueled by a growing concern, ventured out to search for her. The park, a minute's drive from their neighborhood, was the first destination on her list. The soft rustling of trees accompanied her measured footsteps, and soon she arrived at the familiar running path. The sun-bleached wooden benches and fading trail markers seemed to mock her search. There was no sign of Rebecca. With her heart pounding in her chest, Sarah turned to retrace her steps, her mind racing with thoughts of what could have happened. At that moment, the laughter of children echoed through the park, a stark contrast to the dread that weighed heavily within her. A warm breeze carried whispers of a community unprepared for a nightmare lurking just beyond the horizon. As Sarah returned home, her heart sank further at the realization of the deepening night. She had no idea that this was just the beginning of a harrowing journey, one that would plunge the town of Maplewood into a chaos it had never known. The disappearance of Rebecca Clarity would unravel threads of secrets entwined in the seemingly idyllic community, revealing chilling truths that some would do anything to keep hidden. The victim. Rebecca Clarity was more than just a name whispered among friends. She was the heartbeat of Maplewood's elementary school. Her laughter seemed to radiate from every corner of the classroom, sparking joy in the eyes of her students. To them, she was more than a teacher. She was a confidante, a mentor, someone who genuinely cared about each of them. This was evident in her dedication to create a supportive environment that felt like home, where creativity flourished and curiosity was met with encouragement. Growing up in Maplewood, Rebecca was known for her bright smile and boundless energy. Friends recalled countless afternoons spent crafting elaborate games in her backyard, her infectious laughter echoing against the fences of their neighborhood. She had a gift for finding beauty in the mundane and treating life's challenges as opportunities for growth. A trait a nurse dedicated to helping others. As the weeks rolled on, the investigation into her disappearance began to unfurl. Rebecca's parents, now shattered, crafted statements for the media, painting a portrait of a caring daughter who had loved hard and lived well. Together, they shared anecdotes about her achievements and aspirations. She had dreams of one day opening her own art therapy program. Such immense talent, they expressed, radiated warmth, yet never overshadowed the need to give back to others. To law enforcement, Rebecca Clarity's world became a web that needed untangling. Her innocent profile had begun to crack, revealing connections that hinted at complexities lurking beneath the surface. Friends and coworkers interviewed painted a picture of a radiant spirit, But as they drew nearer to Rebecca's personal life, a deeper narrative began to emerge. Whispers of unfulfilled relationships and shadows cast by past heartbreaks floated through conversations, unsettling realities that lingered just beyond the charm of her smile. The search was on, but little did they know that Rebecca's past held keys to her present details that could either illuminate the mystery of her disappearance or doom it to unending darkness. Somehow, her vibrant story was intertwined with untold secret lives, which would soon surface, reshaping innocent perceptions of what lay just beneath the idyllic surface of Maplewood. Crime scene. The air was thick with tension as the first responders secured the cordoned-off area of Maplewood Park. It felt surreal, a place usually bustling with children playing freely, and families picnicking, now transformed into a precinct of caution tape and whispered speculations. A jogger, unaware of the unfolding drama, had stumbled upon a discarded shoe near the edge of a dense thicket. And the eerie sense of discovery sent shivers through the investigators as they arrived at the scene. Detective Aaron Mills, a seasoned member of the Maplewood police force, knelt beside the shoe, his brow furrowed in concentration. He noted the scuffed exterior, sides of it caked with dried mood, a testament to a hasty retreat. He felt the unease ripple among his team, the weight of what they might find hidden beneath the foliage pressing upon them. After all, with every case that began with a disappearance, the specter of death loomed ominously close, waiting to whisper its cruel truths. As the search team fanned out, combing through the underbrush, sporadic gusts of wind rustled the leaves, carrying with them the sounds of an evening that seemed intent to forget the chaos that had erupted within the park. The light waned, casting long shadows and transforming familiar shapes into looming silhouettes, amplifying the eeriness of the moment. Detective Mills motioned for flashlights, illuminating the terrain in sharp bursts, revealing aspects of the park that would soon haunt their memories. Hours passed as searchers sifted through every conceivable space, calling Rebecca's name into the empty expanses. The tension mounted when they unearthed her cell phone, its shattered screen appearing lifeless against the earth. Mill's heart sank. The phone would undoubtedly provide crucial evidence, the last messages seen, any calls mating together the fragments of Rebecca's final hours. Eventually, as darkness seeped fully into the surroundings, a chilling shout reverberated through the night air. In the thick brush bordering the riverbank, a searcher had stumbled upon something far more ominous, a glimmer of color tugging at the branches. With dread sinking into their chests, officers moved swiftly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, revealing the find that would shatter the last shreds of hope in the community. A piece of clothing, splattered with signs of a struggle. That night, Maplewood would never be the same. No longer was it a sanctuary seeped in familiarity, but a town awakening to a chilling realization danger was real and lurking. Alone in their homes, the residents could only try to shield themselves from the growing suspicion and fear surrounding them, echoing long into the shadows cast by the loss of Rebecca Clarity. The early investigation. In the aftermath of the unsettling discovery, the Maplewood police quickly transitioned from routine operations to a full-force investigation. The town, once blissfully ignorant of its darker echoes, now buzzed with tension and uncertainty. Missing persons, reported as a standard protocol, morphed into a whirlwind of urgency, encompassing not only local officers, but also drawing in the attention of state law enforcement. Detective Mills, assuming the lead on the case, gathered his team to strategize. In the dimly lit conference room, a map spread before them offered a visual context to Rebecca's life. Noticing the surrounding points of interest, their home, the school, and the park, the detective began to outline a plan, meticulously detailing the network of people who had been in her orbit. As they mapped connections, each name bore the weight of possible motives, suspicions heavy in the air. With the first wave of interviews initiated, the focus turned to those closest to Rebecca. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances were all drawn into the spotlight. Each individual shared their perceptions and experiences with the vibrant teacher, the tension ever growing with the notion that one of them might hold the key to unlocking the mystery. Among those interviewed was Sarah, Rebecca's closest companion, her voice trembling as she recounted the frantic search for her friend. Sarah's benevolent heart strained under the burden of loss as she spoke of Rebecca's tenderness and her desire to uplift those around her. Detective Mills noted Sarah's hesitance, the way her eyes momentarily darted away, and instinctively felt there was more to her story, scripts buried beneath layers of fear and love. As the investigation continued, officers scoured electronic records to trace Rebecca's last movements. Calls, texts, and social media accounts became focal points of analysis. They told a story of a young woman balancing passion and ambition, yet hints of vulnerabilities emerged in the exchanges. A troubling message surfaced out, late-night communication from an unknown number, punctuated with veiled threats that caused the hairs on the back of Mill's neck to rise. Simultaneously, the community began to fracture. An invisible line divided the fearful and the hopeful, creating an atmosphere where notions of safety crumbled. Town meetings were convened, yet voices whispered suspicions about one another. The very fabric of their lives began to unravel, as standing beside a friend or neighbor became mingled with uncertainty. The deep-rooted sense of trust within Maplewood had been shaken, with residents glancing sideways at familiar faces, questioning their safety as the investigation demanded answers that remained just out of reach. But Detective Mills knew, amid chaos, clarity comes if only they would find it before it was too late. The dead ends. As the days turned into a restless week since Rebecca's disappearance, the atmosphere in Maplewood became suffused with anxiety and apprehension. Detective Mills knew that urgency was imperative. However, progress in the case seemed elusive. With each interview conducted and every piece of evidence scrutinized, the team regularly hit dead ends, compelling leads that led to nowhere, fueling ongoing frustration. Investigators labored over access to Rebecca's phone records and social media accounts, hoping to unravel any web of connections that might hint toward a motive or a suspect. Every message read like a page from her life, yet so many written words, once vibrant, now felt hollow in the absence of her laughter. The unknown number that had sent the ominous message remained a specter. Despite their repeated attempts to trace it, it resided in the shadows, leaving no tangible clues behind. Meanwhile, tensions mounted within the community. Rumors and speculation ignited paranoia among residents as the police pursued leads that turned dry and cold. The local news buzzed with sensational headlines, sparking interest from outside the town. And soon, unwanted attention cast a harsh light on Maplewood. The vibrant park, once a cherished gathering place, lay hauntingly empty, echoing the void left by Rebecca. Donna went that day. One evening, Mills received a promising tip. A lengthy call history between Rebecca and a former boyfriend, Daniel. emerged as a connection that warranted deeper investigation. Daniel, now living in another city, was quick to deny any involvement but agreed to cooperate. His presence, however, acted like a double-edged sword, making the team question whether they were being played by a clever manipulator or if his fresh perspective might provide critical answers. As Mills spoke to Daniel, he noted the subtle shifts in his demeanor of nervous fidgeting, a slight stammer in his speech. The young man waxed poetic about their history, yet the disconnect lingered, leading Mills to wonder whether the emotional ties were really as innocent as they seemed. Daniel's insistence that he had moved on didn't align with the heavy veil of sadness that remained. With each dead end, the desperation only heightened, leaving the detective and his team grappling for answers, wrestling with the suffocating realization that every apparent lead could be an elaborate distraction. As officers returned to the drawing board, Mills wrestled with mounting pressure from the community and the media, fully aware they had to capture the truth before it dissolved completely, along with Rebecca Clarity's bright spirit that had once illuminated their beloved town. A break in the case. After what felt like an eternity of uneventful days, a flicker of hope ignited when a forensic specialist delivered a report on the clothing found at the park. The fabric showed traces of a familiar scent cologne that had permeated the fibers, distinct yet not overwhelmingly strong. It was enough to phase the investigation from a sea of vague conjecture into a targeted pursuit, giving Mills renewed motivation to search for connections to that specific fragrance. With this newfound lead, the team began canvassing local businesses, focusing on popular retail outlets that catered to men's fragrances. Posters were distributed, detailing a description of Rebecca's clothing and emphasizing the timeline of her disappearance. Something remarkable happened. The ripple effect of her case sparked engagement from the community once again. Residents began stepping forward with memories and observations they hadn't shared before. Among the newcomers to the investigation was a local barista named Mia, who worked at a coffee shop near the park. She mentioned a patron who frequented the shop in the afternoons, often lingering over his coffee while wearing a cologne that matched the scent picked up on Rebecca's clothing. It was a specific blend, faint yet captivating, a scent identifiable to the sharper noses of the cafe crowd. They had exchanged lines of small talk, and he was notably fixated on the vibrant energy that seemed to shine through Rebecca, a familiar presence that now troubled her. Detective Mills learned that the man often came by alone. His name was Ethan Mansell, a man who had recently moved back to Maplewood after several years away. Mills could sense the tension building as they pursued this new lead, knowing that they were entwining themselves in a delicate web spun from possibility. The investigative team traced Ethan's whereabouts through both surveillance footage and witness accounts. His aloof demeanor was marked by pattern styming his visits to the cafe, and occasionally coinciding with Rebecca's running routine at the park. With this evidence suddenly colliding against their previous findings, suspicion swirled around Ethan's return to the town and his connection to a woman who had vanished without a trace. Mills knew that time was of the essence. As he prepared to bring Ethan in for questioning, he felt a surge of unease mixed with anticipation. They were finally stepping away from the unreachable shadows towards a potential unraveling of the truth. The specter of unanswered questions loomed larger now, and the thoughts of Rebecca's fate hung like a weight on the consciousness of the town. The pieces could almost fit, but they needed verification. In that space of uncertainty, the haunting question remained. Would this lead be the key, or just another false dawn? The suspect. The sterile walls of the interrogation room cast an oppressive atmosphere as Detective Mills leaned against the table, eyeing Ethan Mansell with a steely gaze. The young man sat across from him, his fingers drumming nervously against the metal surface, a calculated play of composure trying to mask the growing tension. Mills took in the facial expressions, the slight twitch of Ethan's mouth as he answered questions, a telltale sign of a man aware of the implications looming around him. "Tell me about your relationship with Rebecca Clarity," Mills began, his tone even, carefully savoring the weight of the question. Ethan's gaze flickered briefly toward the one-way mirror, then snapped back, an instinct to weigh the room for hidden observers. "Rebecca, we didn't know each other that well." Ethan stammered, shaking his head as if to dispel the notion. "I mean, I saw her jog frequently," he added, his words rushed. "She was always so lively." Mills leaned in, his interest piqued. We made small talk. You frequented the coffee shop. Did you ever join her on... Ethan hesitated, barely hiding the disquiet creeping into his demeanor. No, just a couple of brief interactions at the cafe. Nothing more. As the words hung in the air, Mills sensed the disturbance layered in Ethan's expression, an uncertain wavering that betrayed his unease. He pressed on, pulling out the piece of clothing they'd found, the one marked with the familiar scent. "Can you explain why Rebecca's clothing has traces of your cologne?" Ethan's eyes widened, a fragile mask slipping down. "I didn't do anything. It's just weird. I was at the shop that day, but I swear I left before she went missing." The strain of his protests hung heavy in the room, the urgency palpable. Mills crossed his arms, noting Ethan's shifting posture, every instinct telling him that the young man was holding back. There was a darkness just beneath his surface, a festering secret that danced playfully on the edges of his words. "Your alibi doesn't match up," Mills challenged, his voice measured yet firm. "Witnesses placed you near the park around the time she disappeared." Ethan's brows knitted together in a moment of fight or flight. Feeling the walls close in, he finally muttered, "I was looking for my old friends. I wanted to reacquaint myself with the town." But the explanation felt flimsy, careless against the backdrop of Rebecca's absence. Mills could see vulnerability in Ethan's facadian allure of desperation below layers of compulsive defense. As he pressed further, Ethan began to unravel, drops of anger seeping into his voice. "What do you want from me?" he snapped, fists clenching. "I didn't do anything wrong. You can't pin this on me." Detective Mills leaned closer, the convergence of emotion and evidence igniting a spark of urgency in him. As the hours rolled on in that dimly lit room, Mills knew the truth was there, lurking, waiting to be coaxed out from the depths of Ethan's mind. All he needed was the right question to break through. The community hung in a delicate balance, and behind the walls of that sterile room, the hunt was intensifying for answers that, at long last, might reveal the unsettling fate of Rebecca Clarity. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a palpable tension as the trial of Ethan Mansell commenced. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, casting an ethereal glow on the somber faces that filled the benches. The air was thick with grief, a heavy reminder of Rebecca Clarity, who had cast an indelible mark on the town of Maplewood through kindness and light. The crowd packed inside awaited the unfolding of truths, long hidden beneath layers of fear and uncertainty. Detective Mills sat in the gallery, seated near Rebecca's family, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and anguish. They had endured weeks of wrangling through the criminal justice system, and as each day passed, the anticipation of closure wrapped around them like a shroud. Eyewitnesses, FBI experts, and forensic specialists lined up to testify, pushing forth a wealth of evidence that painted a chilling portrait of Ethan as a suspect. In his tailored Navy suit, Ethan's demeanor was boxed in by tension. He sat at the defense table, glancing at his attorney, a man with a steely expression and a quick tongue, a formidable opponent eager to chip away at the prosecution's case. The initial proceedings unfolded under an avalanche of emotions. As the timeline of the day Rebecca had vanished came under scrutiny. In the wake of detectives' findings, testimonies from witnesses began to weave a complex tapestry of locations and encounters, with Ethan at the center. As the prosecution presented their case, a chilling narrative emerged. The twisted desire to reconnect with Rebecca had morphed into obsession more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Testimonies from those who saw him near the park before her disappearance painted a harrowing picture. The once beloved coffee shop where laughter and connection thrived now bore the weight of darkest secrets. Yet, through it all, Ethan maintained an air of innocence, as if convinced of his unavoidable fate. But the defense strategy hinged on raising doubt. Ethan's lawyer scrambled to dissect the evidence, emphasizing the lack of tangible proof: no DNA, no eyewitnesses who could concretely place him at the scene of the crime. In a chilling counter-argument, they argued that no elements of malice could be definitively linked to him. All of it mere coincidence, a tragic turn of fate spiraling beyond his control. Tension reached a crescendo during the cross-examination. Ethan's attorney scrutinized Mills, attempting to dismantle the prosecution's case. "What makes you so certain of my client's guilt? Is it just circumstantial evidence?" The defense attorney's voice dripped with a calculated accusation, aiming to shake the detective's confidence. Mills stood firm, grounded by unwavering conviction. The gut-wrenching truth that had emerged from Rebecca's case propelled him forward. "We may not have captured every moment, but what we do have showcases a pattern." Mills leaned forward, piercing through the uncertainty. "Rebecca is no longer with us, and the fears she carried have roots deep in the choices made by this defense." As the trial progressed, the courtroom ebbed and flowed with rising emotions, from the anguished expressions of Rebecca's family to the stillness that hung in the air at pivotal moments. It became clear that Maplewood itself was on trial, caught between its cherished memory of a vibrant soul and the blight of betrayal. As the jury went into deliberation, the weight of guilt and innocence simmered in the air. Will they find a way to tether the layers of suspicion into something concrete enough to serve justice? Outside the courthouse, the townsfolk murmured anxiously. Many held hope that they might emerge from this dark chapter once and for all, the memory of Rebecca lighting the path forward. The aftermath. The verdict reverberated through the hollow halls of the courthouse like thunderclaps, echoing the revelations that had unfolded over the preceding weeks. As the judge's voice declared Ethan Mansell guilty of manslaughter, the air thickened with a cocktail of disbelief and relief. Tears streamed down Rebecca's family members' faces, variations of joy and grief woven together as they absorbed the finality of the decision. The closure they sought for so long had finally arrived, but at a grave cost. In the days that followed, Maplewood bore witness to a slow but genuine recovery, a collective willing to heal from the scars inflicted upon their community fabric. As autumn began to shed its leaves into vibrant hues, the weight of sorrow shifted slightly to incorporate remembrance. School assemblies dedicated to Rebecca began to sprout up across the district, where memories of her spirit bloomed in shared stories and tribute art projects uniting students in honoring a teacher who had touched their lives. Despite the exhale taken by those who stood in defiance of Ethan's actions, the shadows of his choices cast lingering doubts. Whispers circulated through the town, a gnawing curiosity compounded by the questions that remained unanswered. How had a simple encounter escalated into such tragedy? What secrets lay hidden in the corners of Maplewood that needed addressing? The wound ran deeper than the loss of life. I had exposed vulnerabilities in the very essence of a community that had once felt so safe and insulated. Detective Mills endured moments filled with reflection. Though the weight of justice had been served, he felt the remnants of Rebecca's absence pressing on him like a thick fog. Between the discontent of unresolved cases and the heart-wrenching stories shared in the wake of the trial, the echoes still haunted him. He often found himself wandering the now empty trails of the park, once a sanctuary for families enjoying warm days, now a testament to tragedy shrouded in quietude. Mills had a new resolve, a mission ignited by the haunting memories of Rebecca. He began collaborating with local schools, spearheading programs aimed at educating students about the importance of mental health, relationships, consent, and safety. Through this endeavor, he hoped to ensure her story would not be one whispered in the dark, but a lesson imparted to future generations. A torch passed along that could illuminate potentially dangerous paths before they hardened. However small, these efforts began to breathe new life into a community that desperately craved healing. Memorial events, park renovations, and art installations emerged, framing Rebecca as a guiding light amid the shadow. Public forums became avenues for voices long muted to emerge, carving out space for those who had lived with similar stories of loss and survival. Despite the wounds of the past, Maplewood found itself staring into a flicker of hope. The dark cloud that had so recently enveloped the town loosened its grip, allowing a renewed sense of purpose to flourish, a promise to remember, to learn from tragedy and emerge stronger, united in the memory of a woman whose spirit could not be extinguished. Reflection. As winter descended upon Maplewood, a quiet stillness enveloped the town, blanketing the memories of autumn's bustling gatherings. Detective Mills often found himself at Rebecca's favorite haunt, a spot by the riverbank where sun-dappled afternoons brought life to even the simplest of moments. The echoes of laughter that once drifted through the air faded, replaced by an introspective silence that allowed him to confront the shadows lingering in his mind. It was here that he paused, reflecting on the dual-edged nature of justice. The verdict had brought resolution, yet it hadn't quelled the collective grief of a community. Rebuilding trust a complex endeavor required more than just the finality of a court ruling. It called for open conversations, tailored outreach initiatives, and communal support networks to empower those who felt the weight of their own unshared story. Mills recalled Rebecca's light and the tranquility she brought to the lives she touched. Like ripples through water, the consequences of her absence echoed, impacting friends, families, and strangers alike. Imperative to Mills was the realization that grief did not vanish with closure. It evolved, transforming into a different breed of remembrance. In a world marked by chaos and uncertainty, Mills understood that sharing truth was just as powerful as seeking justice. Community could rise from the ashes of trauma not in denial of their grief, but by embracing the complexities of their emotions, intertwining them with knowledge and awareness. As snowflakes began to fall, covering the hardship of the past in a blanket of purity, Mills envisioned a future where storytelling would bridge the gap between fear and familiarity. Through tributes and memories, they could continually honor Rebecca, her legacy thriving in the education and compassion that marked the lives of those she had touched. Maplewood would rebuild together, forging a path toward healing woven with love, understanding, and a renewed commitment to safeguard every vibrant soul within its boundaries.